Hi there, welcome back. Do you have a child with type 1 diabetes? Or do you care for a child with type 1 diabetes? Are they newly diagnosed? Or are you years into trying to figure out this parenting diabetes puzzle? Well, welcome to the first episode of 3 to Treat on Home in the Range. In this series, I'll share real-life useful tips and learnings that I went through raising 2 type 1 kids. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know I've had type 1 diabetes myself for 42 years and worked as a diabetes educator. And I simply have a mission to share with others my experiences and hopefully help you guys along the way with your journey. So let me share what happened when our first child of 2 was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I'll share some tips that I would want to share with my younger self or past self during these videos. So the first tip I would want to share with myself would be things do get better with time and routines get easier. So the first of my 2 type 1 kids, Rowan, was diagnosed when she was 18 months. Pretty typical onset. Good thing I was type 1 and I knew what it was like, and I was also a nurse. But basically, failure to thrive, she wasn't gaining weight, she was losing hair, and I could not get that bottle out of her mouth. She was constantly thirsty, going through multiple wet diapers, very, very irritable. So the signs were there, and we took her to the hospital, emerge department, knowing she most likely had type 1 diabetes. And at that point, they admitted her overnight, stabilized her. We caught it pretty early. Blood sugars, I think, were in the high 30s, which is pretty high. But she was not in diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a very dangerous medical emergency. But we stayed there overnight, and actually I worked at the hospital, so that was kind of neat. Got her stabilized, and then the shock set in. I think nobody can prepare a parent to feel what they feel when they're told that their child has a chronic, lifetime condition that requires very intensive management, which I think was both a blessing and a curse that I knew the level of management required to take care of diabetes with my own experience. So at that time, we were sent to an outpatient diabetes education center to learn the ropes and the basics about diabetes management, which most countries do have, I believe. I can't speak for everybody, but in Canada, where I'm from, that's kind of the routine. They don't keep them in hospital anymore. They send them on their way, and then we go to outpatient the next day or a few days later. So me being me, I compartmentalize, I put it aside, and we go through the motions. I must say, I'll share the experience going through the diabetes education systems as a diabetic and as a nurse. Was quite interesting. But for the sake of this video, I think I want to emphasize kind of the feelings we were going through. It was shock, like I said, and then sort of running on adrenaline for the first little while. I think I bought out the entire grocery store and all the sugar-free products I could find, thinking, oh, I'll make the kid feel good. But she's only 18 months. So went through the training, brought her home, then things started to sink in. We had 3 other children at the time, non-diabetics, so that was also involving them in what was going on and explaining to them, so it was quite an experience. So back at home now, the feelings of grief and shock sort of set in at this immense feeling of responsibility that we have in looking after this vulnerable 18-month-old child. And if you can imagine, an 18-month-old at the best of times is picky. They don't want to follow routine, and they definitely don't want to be poked with the needles and have finger sticks done to test their blood sugar, because when she was diagnosed, there was no Dexcom. So grief and shock setting in. Weird coping strategies, like I said. I would go to the grocery store multiple times looking for sugar-free products I could give this little kid to keep her happy. So after a few weeks, we get settled into new routines and the sleep deprivation. When a child's diagnosed with type 1 at 18 months, they have an immature neurological system, so they're unable to feel their low blood sugars, which is very key for a type 1 diabetic to survive, especially without a Dexcom, which will alarm you when you're low. But for those who don't have a Dexcom, and back then we didn't have them available to us, it was very dangerous. So we took shifts checking blood sugars through the night. We'd leave her a little bit high when she went to bed, so she wouldn't go into a hypoglycaemic shock and pass away on us. Very, very stressful time. Over time, some of the positives though, she was a trooper. She basically took it in stride, probably more tolerant than we were. She allowed us to poke her fingers and test her blood sugar. She fought it a little bit on the insulin injections, but overall, 18 months, she did exceptionally well, started to gain weight, started to adjust to the new routines, and we all did as well. So I think the second tip I would give my past self is create non-diabetic routines, because everything focused around her type 1 routine. And I think the other family members suffered a little bit because everything was so structured and we wanted to do everything right. And that took a toll on the family culture. But, I understand why we did it. But if I were to give myself, my past self a tip, it'd be create non-diabetic routines. Like having the same bedtime every day. I think I had a bit of guilt because I'm a type 1. I felt like I passed on the genes to my child. And I did. But anyways, in a nutshell, create those non-diabetic routines. Continue to do the activities outside of school, like swimming. So the minute we started doing that kind of stuff, things sort of normalized, everybody's mental health improved, and that was better for the diabetic. And as a type 1 myself, growing up with it, my parents, God love them, they didn't helicopter parent me. They allowed me to be a normal kid. Sometimes scary detriment. A few times I probably could have died, but overall, they had me on a good routine for food. But I was still allowed to go to birthday parties. I was allowed to engage in any activity I chose. And diabetes was kind of secondary versus upfront and center, which I worry about parents nowadays who have access to Dexcom on their phones and constantly check their phone when they're at work and, worry about their kid. I get it, totally get it, but, keep in mind that will take its toll. My tip would be to just understand that, most times it's going to be just fine. Back in the day when I was diabetic, we didn't have any of these things. I think another thing that was really shocking to me was learning the differences between how I viewed my type 1 diabetes and how taking care of a child with type 1 diabetes. That was a little bit of an adjustment, and it still is to this day. My 2 type 1 kids, I'm only talking about my first one here, they've got their own path, they have their own journey, they deal with their diabetes completely differently than I do, but they're okay, they're alive, they're well. Sometimes they do better than other times, just like me. So I think accepting that, her body was different than mine, number one. Just the basal rates of insulin were different. The food preferences, of course, growing up were different than mine. So accepting that was something that I would have to say was a good learning lesson. Tip number 3, I think, for my past self would be really, really creating a support system. You're not always going to find it with your medical team. Depends on the medical team. But creating a family support system. We unfortunately didn't have a lot of support out here. Our family are from a different area of Canada. But we had some friends that we'd gotten to know, and they were really helpful. We also had older kids who could help around the house a little bit, so that was also useful. But having a support system, be it family, friends, is super, super important. I also say finding support. I found personally on the diabetes online community, they call the DOC. Back then I was on 2 Diabetes. I looked for communities online to engage in conversation with, going through the same things I was going through. And that was really, really important for my mental health. I actually started blogging back then. I did quite well. The name of the blog was 3 to Treat, because there was 3 of us to treat at the time. But very, very important for mental health to identify with others and knowing you're not alone, because you're not. So thanks for tuning in and watching this. I hope you feel a little bit heard. I'm not going to cover everything in one video, but I plan to do a series, so stay tuned for more videos. Another tip I would tell my old self would be okay with the learning curve. You're not going to know everything right away. I'd actually been working as a diabetes educator at the time. I thought I knew everything, but pediatric diabetes management is completely different than what I was doing. So as a new person not knowing anything about type 1 diabetes, you'll get it. It's going to take some time, but the basics are pretty quick to grasp, and they're duplicatable. So find out as much as you can online and through your official venues, your medical team, of course, and then you'll do just fine. Just be patient with yourself. It's pretty overwhelming at first. And last but not least, I think the biggest tip I would share with you folks and with my past self would be take care of yourself and each other, but take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, not selfishly by any stretch of the imagination, but take time to care for your mental health and well-being, your physical health, your own nutrition, and keep tabs on how you're feeling and how you're doing, because burnout with diabetes management is a real thing, especially as a parent. So keep on top of that. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and check out my latest videos. I cover a wide range of topics. This is one that's true to my heart, and kind of sharing a piece of who I really am. A little less scripted and a little more real. So bye for now, and take care of yourself and those little ones that you're taking care of too.